The courts haven't got the authority to actually make him obey the laws, and therefore, because it's convention and norm rather than anything else, he is effectively governing as an autocratic leader. So we have, in many ways, a president that actually is testing the bounds of the constitutional settlement and doing so in a way that actually gives him much more power, as I say, than George III in the way he is doing so. So neither Congress nor the courts nor public opinion seem to be on his mind when he is following through on his long-held beliefs.
Now, in just a moment, President Trump is planning an escalation of his trade policy on Wednesday. We'll ask what might be in store for the UK and other American trading partners. We'll also find out why National Crime Agency is taking a closer look at Turkish barbershops. And also our friends at Delta Poll will tell us what the nation thinks of reform, net zero, and who's Britain's favourite Irish person. I think that's a post St. Patrick's Day polling. Plus, if you've done a 23andMe genetic test, a DNA test, you may want to think about deleting your data. We'll explain what's going on with the company in just a moment. After 3, the former US ambassador to Denmark will tell me what he makes of J.D. Vance's comments that Denmark is not a good ally. A dentist is also going to be joining us to reveal the healthy foods that are surprisingly bad for your teeth. And an international wine judge will free us all from the pretension of wine culture. And he's bringing some wine, which is very good. Now, President Trump is gearing up for what he calls Liberation Day, also known as Wednesday, April the 2nd, when he plans to slap US trading partners with tariffs. So what's on the table and how worried should Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer be? I'm joined now by David Dunn, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham. David, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
He calls it Liberation Day. Can you sort of explain what the thinking behind that? The American markets will be liberated?
Well, it's a marketing ploy from the marketeer himself. What it's about is giving Trump the opportunity to fulfill his long-held belief that actually his trading partners are screwing him over, exploiting him, and don't respect him. And this is a way, he sees, of recreating the American industrial landscape of the 1950s by slapping everyone with these tariffs in a hope to make all imports more expensive and therefore to make manufactured goods from the United States more competitive. But it's hugely disruptive, hugely problematic for the American consumers, who are going to actually have huge amounts of inflation and a slower economy as a consequence. But it's also just massively creates uncertainty and disruption in terms of actually the ability to plan ahead as to what things cost. It's also going to cost an absolute fortune to administer it, because he's talking about bringing in reciprocal tariffs, and therefore it's not just going to be one set of tariff for one particular good, but it depends what individual markets charge America as to what level of tariff he imposes on the goods from that particular country. So it's a hugely ambitious, hugely disruptive and hugely problematic thing to be doing.
David, Donald Trump has said he couldn't care less if car makers raise prices after his 25% tariffs on foreign-made vehicles. I mean, those are his words, couldn't care less. How's that going to be going down for American voters, many of whom, of course, voted for Donald Trump?
Well, it's extraordinary, isn't it? There's the problem with the American system of government in that he can't face the electors again if he abides by the Constitution, and therefore, in a sense, any second term he can do what he like and disregards what the American public think. And actually, that's clearly what he is doing. He has this dogmatic idea that he's held for decades, and he's going to push it through, and he is going to disregard the pain felt by the American electorate, despite the fact that he got elected, not just promising to bring down inflation, but to bring down prices, which is a different thing. And of course, what he's going to have instead is huge inflation on cars, on pickups, on trucks, and actually on almost all all imported goods, not just manufactured goods, but actually agricultural goods, which America relies on from Mexico and other parts of the world. So he is pursuing his fantasy, and the American public are actually in shock. They're in shock about a whole variety of things that he's doing, but of course they can do nothing about it. Unlike a parliamentary system where we could ditch Boris Johnson or Liz Truss, they're stuck with him really for another 3.5 years. They get a chance at the midterms to actually make his life difficult by changing Congress, but effectively he is able to do what he wants. He actually has more power than George III ever dreamed of. America celebrates 250 years of its anniversary under his tenure, and yet what they have done is they've brought about a new king in the way in which he is pursuing things, irrespective of what the American public think.
Well, David, you say that perhaps Donald Trump is rushing to get all these things done before the midterms, which are going to come in, about a year and a half.
Yeah.
But he seems to be circumventing Congress and the Senate anyway. I mean, all this stuff is done by executive order. He hasn't really gone to Congress to get approval for many of the things that he's doing. Is it going to make much difference?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Typically, what happens is a president will propose things through his party's control of the House where bills start, and he will do things through legislation. What Trump has done differently is to ignore Congress effectively, and by issue executive orders. It's constitutionally problematic. He's actually challenging the ability of Congress to have any say on anything at all in these matters by just trying to do things by executive fiat. And he's doing things actually by interfering in traditional areas where Congress has control. So, for example, it's Congress that passes budgets for example, the aid department. And what he's doing is saying, I'm not going to spend your money. I'm going to shut the aid department, and therefore you'll have to like it or lump it. And Congress is, because the Republicans control both houses of Congress, they are not pushing back on him at all, despite the fact that he is usurping their power, particularly the power of the Senate. So there is a prospect that actually, even if the Democrats take control of one or both houses in the midterms, that actually they will be limited in what they do. Because even though he is breaking the laws, and in many cases the courts are saying you are breaking the laws, the courts haven't got the authority to actually make him obey the laws, and therefore, because it's convention and norm rather than anything else, he is effectively governing as an autocratic leader. So we have, in many ways, a president that actually is testing the bounds of the constitutional settlement and doing so in a way that actually gives him much more power, as I say, than George III in the way he is doing so. So neither Congress nor the courts nor public opinion seem to be on his mind when he is following through on his long-held beliefs.
It is extraordinary, though, that when you look at the approval ratings for Donald Trump, I'm looking here, they were updated yesterday, 29th of March at 12 p.m. US time. And they're not as wide as you might think. It's 49.6% of disapproval, 47.4% approval. So there's he's in the minus of approvals, but only just, almost a 1.5 or something in it. Are you surprised that he still has a lot of support from the American public on these policies of tariffs, the rhetoric about Ukraine, I beg your pardon, Greenland, which we're going to talk about in the following hour? Are you surprised that he still seems to have his backers backing him?
Well, I've been surprised for the last 10 years, to be frank, actually, in terms of the way in which no matter what he does, whether it's his criminality, admitting to sexual abuse, whether it's his outrageous behavior towards his allies and threatening to actually use military force to take over Greenland, whether it's appeasement of Russia on Ukraine and stopping the Ukrainians getting intelligence and ammunition, all of those things you might have thought actually that transgress a whole variety of red lines for a whole variety of traditional Republicans. But the support for Trump is cult-like. There is a spell he has over his base, and they, no matter what he does, no matter what the transgression, whether he makes things life more important, more expensive for them, disrupts the stock market so it crashes to below it was when he took office. Whatever he does, these people seem to support him and
Yeah.
are transfixed by the idea that he will ultimately deliver something for them.
David, thank you for your time. Always good to speak. David Dunn, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham.